On today's episode, does Tij Iginla have the makeup to be as good as his dad, Jerome? I'll answer that, and we'll get into MacKenzie Entwistle's report card.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Quick reminder to everyone out there watching on YouTube to hit that like button for me. Comment down below as to your thoughts on Tij Iginla, whether you think he's got the makeup to be as good as his dad, Jerome, and also what grade you would give forward MacKenzie Entwistle for his performance this season. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already as well. You're not going to want to miss out on all the fun Blackhawks-related conversations that I'm going to be having throughout the summer, including my Chicago Blackhawks Summer 2024 Top 10 Prospect List kicking off next week. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on that. And last but certainly not least, got to let you all know today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Make sure to download the Game Time app right now, and when you do, use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off to the sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. You guessed it, to kick things off on the show here today, it's time to dive into another 2024 NHL Draft Profile. We're officially in the month of June now, which is pretty crazy to say. So NHL Draft going down in just 28 days time. Still got plenty of prospects that I want to cover here on the show. But as a quick reminder, I have already covered notables such as Ivan Demidov, Artem Levshinov, Caden Lindstrom, Berkeley Catton, Zane Parekh, most of the high-end defensemen in this year's class. Make sure to go and check those episodes out. If there's someone in particular you want to hear about, you can easily find those episodes in the NHL Draft Profile playlist, and everything is time-coded in the description as well to make it easy for you to jump to that specific segment. But the man I'm going to be covering on today's show is none other than Tij Iginla, 6 foot, 190-pound forward who turns 18 on August 1st, one of the youngest players in this year's draft, almost a full year younger than Carter Yakimchuk, who I covered a couple of days ago. Go check that show out if you haven't already, because Carter Yakimchuk, I think, is someone that could be intriguing for the Chicago Blackhawks. But Tij Iginla is absolutely intriguing based on the numbers that he put up this year. And oh yeah, he's the son of Hall of Famer Jerome Iginla, which certainly makes me feel very old on today's episode. I actually was lucky enough to be in attendance for Jerome Iginla's final game as a member of the Calgary Flames. It actually came at the United Center against the Blackhawks back in the day before he wound up getting traded for the first time in his career. So kind of funny and also sad at the same time, looking in the mirror, realizing I'm becoming an old man when I get to cover Jerome's son, Tij Iginla, here on the show. But boy, you can cue up the Stuntin' Like My Daddy, Lil Wayne featuring Birdman, because this kid, reminds a lot of folks of what his dad did at the junior level. And boy, can this kid score goals like Jerome did as well throughout his long and successful NHL career. This season for Tij Iginla was a big one, because coming into the year, he was expected to be, someone who was selected maybe in the back half of the first round, but his stock absolutely skyrocketed all throughout the course of the season. Right around the midway point, he had kind of jumped up into that 10 to 15 range, I think, for a lot of people. I believe he's still probably in that bracket, but some folks think Tij Iginla could even jump up inside the top 10, maybe even the top 5. Heck, I've seen some people suggest that the Blackhawks should take him number 2 overall, because there is a lot to like about his game, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone took a little bit of a gamble on him in the top 10, considering he does have that pedigree, right? That's what the term that NHL franchises like to use, because his dad was a longtime NHLer. Tij has been around the game his entire life. He knows what it's like to be a pro. He's a very good and respectable young man from all accounts, and obviously has a lot to like about his game on the ice as well. So I do think someone is going to take a chance on him. But how about these numbers out of Tij Iginla this season? 84 points in 64 WHL games this past year for the Kelowna Rockets, 47 goals and 37 assists in 64 games. Unbelievable numbers out of Tij. He also added 12 points in 7 games for Team Canada at the U18 World Juniors, 6 goals and 6 assists, and a very good showing there. And the progress, as I mentioned, was really on full display this season, as he only had 18 points in 48 games with the Seattle Thunderbirds the year before, 6 goals and 12 assists. So a massive leap in the goal scoring department out of Tij Iginla as a 17-year-old in the WHL this year. And as I mentioned, the rankings are a little bit all over the place depending on who you're asking. Some people think this guy could creep into the top 10, maybe even the top 5. Some folks have him ranked outside of the top 15. He was ranked 6th by Elite Prospects, 16th by Bob MacKenzie as a bit of an older ranking, 4th by Craig Button, 11th by Tony Ferrari, 12th by McKean's Hockey, 16th by Chris Peters, 11th by Daily Faceoff, 10th by Sportsnet, and 17th by Dabra Prospects. So kind of all over the place here with Tij Iginla. But breaking down his strengths and weaknesses, boy, there is a lot to like, as I referenced. First and foremost, it's the shot. Oh, baby, can this kid rifle a puck? And I do think outside of Cole Yzerman, it's either he or Macklin Celebrini as the best true goal scorer, the second best true goal scorer in this class behind Cole Yzerman. He has a lightning quick release. He can score goals in lots of different varieties. He can blow shots past opposing goaltenders. He's got a really good one-timer, and in transition, he utilizes it as well on odd man rushes. He can open his hips to get that shot off really quickly, and along with that power, he has some pretty darn good pinpoint accuracy. You watch all the goals that Iginla scores from tough angles this year, the ones where he goes absolutely bar down. It's like, oh my gosh, this kid can absolutely shoot the puck, and it is absolutely a translatable skill to the next level. I think he's going to have no problem scoring goals right whenever he enters the NHL. And I think it's also impressive how he can get the puck off his stick in a hurry. I think this might be one of his more underrated attributes, and it's kind of similar to Cole Yzerman. You don't have to have the pass in his wheelhouse, but he's going to find a way to settle it and blow it past the goaltender and get a shot off like that. I was really impressed with the amount of times I saw the puck jump off of the stick of Tij Iginla when it wasn't a pass necessarily right in his wheelhouse. And all in all, his puck control is absolutely a skill as well. Maybe not in the most transition sense. He's very shifty and he can change directions very well. I'll get to his skating here in just a second. But he has that power forward rugged mold. He knows how to use that big frame of his already. And listen, he's only 185 pounds. Like, there's runway there for Tij Iginla to get up to 195, 200 and become an even more dominant force at the next level. But already at his size, he knows how to shield defenders off of him in order to protect the puck. He also silhouettes and silhouettes, I don't know the exact term, I apologize, but he spins and turns in a hurry in order to create some space and separation from the defenders when he is shielding them off of the puck. He also uses his size very well in board battles, which is, I think, very intriguing. He's very engaged in those board battles and ends up winning them more times than not, and those are just big things, especially as I'll get into for the Chicago Blackhawks, that they could use in their forward group, guys who can go and win a foot race into the offensive zone, win a board battle, and maintain that possession. That's something that the Blackhawks forward group has been lacking for a long, long time. So I love to see the shot, the size, and the ability already to play with that size out of Tij Iginla. As far as the skating goes, not great, but he's a good skater. And because he has good technique and shows a steady base, I think there is room for him to improve there more than some other guys because he does show a good technique. And again, it's not great, but he is a good skater, mostly with his crossovers and his edge work. Like, he can pick up speed going through the neutral zone. The top level speed isn't really blow past you speed, but I referenced, he's very good at changing directions in a hurry. So the top line speed isn't great, but he's still able to use that skating ability and his edge work, again, to create space and generate time in order to make a play happen. But his work ethic as well, along with his intensity and hockey IQ, are absolutely strengths. And I personally think Tij Iginla thinks the game as well as anyone I've covered so far, because A trait that a lot of good goal scorers have is they just know where to go on the ice. They see the open ice so well. And there are multiple highlights where you can see Tij Iginla just recognize that little spot, that little gap in the defensive zone or in the defensive coverage. And that makes a world of difference in order to put the puck in the back of the net to generate those opportunities. He thinks the game at such a high level. There's one clip in particular out there. I wish I could pull it up and play it on my own channel, but he basically is out in front of the net and he uses his stick to direct the player who has the puck. He's basically telling him where to pass it. He's covered at the point in time, but he points his stick over here, being like, pass it over here. I'm going to drop off into this open zone. You're going to find me, and I'm going to go top shelf and bury this bad boy. And that's exactly what happened. You could just tell he thinks the game so well. And also, as I mentioned, with his dad, Jerome, being a longtime player, successful player, and a Hall of Famer, Tij grew up around the game. He knows the ins and outs. And as I mentioned, everyone who knows him says he's an amazing kid. He wants to work hard. He wants to get better. He's got that work ethic of an NHLer already instilled in him. And I think that's going to be a very, very big factor in NHL clubs, probably selecting him at the very least in the top 12, top 13. They're just going to like that too much. As far as the weaknesses go, I do have some concerns about his overall playmaking. I feel like most of his assists come from him thinking the game very well, more so than being a strong playmaker. His passing is good, but it's nothing that really jumps off the charts at you. And I do think he ultimately is going to be more of a goal scorer than a playmaker at the next level. And because of that, along with the lack of top speed, I do wonder if he can be a center at the next level. He's been a little bit of a tweener so far in his career. He's played center and wing. And while I do think as rugged and as engaged as he is and how well he thinks the game, he's still not the most reliable defensive player. There are times where it just looks like his effort is a little bit lackluster and he's not engaged on the defensive coverage as much as like he is along the boards in those areas. So there is work for him to go on the defensive side of things. So I do have some concerns about him being a center, but he does have the speed. He does have the intelligence. He does have the work ethic and the heart to want to be a center at the next level. It's just, is he going to be able to be one? I think only time will tell. And also, I just don't know if he's going to be a primary puck carrier at the next level. Like, he's shifty, he turns really fast, but he just doesn't have that top speed. And I wonder because of that, if he's going to be more of a winger at the next level. So there are some concerns there, but there's absolutely a lot to like about Tij Iginla's game. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans. I only got 2 segments, so I'm splitting this one in half here today. Coming up in just a moment, I'll talk about my projection for Tij Iginla, where I ultimately think he ends up getting drafted. I'll get into that in just a second, as long as a potential long-term fit with the Chicago Blackhawks. But first, I got to talk to you all real quick about Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to the next ball game that you want to attend, and I'm happy to announce that Game Time is now an official authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets both faster and easier. Plus, prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time helps take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And I personally have used Game Time since I was back in high school. It's always been my preferred way to purchase tickets when I'm going down to the United Center to watch the Blackhawks, or if I'm going to Wrigley Field to catch a Cubbies game in the summer, or even if I'm traveling in another city and want to go see a concert with one of my buddies or want to go and see a stand-up comedy event. I always make sure to check Game Time first because it's the fastest, cheapest, and easiest way for you to purchase all of your tickets. I also love how they provide seat pictures from every seat in the house so you know exactly to expect before you purchase and before you arrive. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app right now, and when you do, make sure to use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps and you'll get $20 off with your first purchase. Yes, you heard me right. You can get $20 off to go and see Shota Imanaga at Wrigley Field this summer. All you got to do, download the Game Time app, use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps when you create an account. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed, Game Time. All right, back here, getting back into Tij Iginla's projection and a potential long-term fit here with the Chicago Blackhawks. I do think he's going to be a top 6 goal scorer at the next level with great size, great overall hockey instincts, and that tenacity to get better. I don't know if he's going to be I could see him being a 30, 35, 40 goal scorer at the next level, which is obviously top line capabilities, but I do have those concerns about the playmaking. I ultimately, though, think he's going to be a power play one guy and give you upside on the man advantage, the way that he can shoot the puck, he can be a big body down low and crash the net. He's not afraid of doing those things. And ultimately, because of those skills and because of that pedigree, the tenacity, being a good kid, I think someone is probably going to take a chance on him inside the top 8. At the very least, though, I think 9 through 13. 13 is probably the longest he goes. I know some folks have him ranked 16th, 17th, and going a little bit later. I just don't see him lasting that long. Again, with the pedigree, the goal scoring upside, he's the second, at the worst, the third best goal scorer in this year's draft, learning from his dad, stunting like his daddy, putting up good numbers. The progression from this past year was unbelievable. He's still not going to turn 18 until well after he's drafted in August. One of the youngest players in this year's draft. Yeah, I think there's too much intrigue ultimately for Tij Iginla to not go in the top 10, but I think the latest he absolutely goes is number 13. As far as his upside and like a potential long-term fit with the Blackhawks, I think this kind of size and goal scoring ability is very intriguing to the Blackhawks organization. I think Kyle Davidson has to love the makeup of Tij Iginla's game because this is something that the Blackhawks have been missing in their forward group for quite a while. And I really referenced this when breaking down Caden Lindstrom's NHL draft profile. And I think Lindstrom would be a great fit, and Iginla would be a great fit for the Blackhawks organization because they need those guys with size in the top 6 that do have good speed, a good skill game, but also have a little bit of that rugged power forward mold. The Blackhawks have been missing that for so long. And just think about the guys who have been in their top 6 over the last 5 or 6 years. How many of those guys have had size, can go and win a battle in the offensive zone, retrieve pucks for you, carry possession, shield off defenders to kind of anchor things down low on the cycle? They've been missing that forever. So I think Lindstrom, Iginla, those types of makeups have to be intriguing for the Chicago Blackhawks. As far as like Lindstrom versus Iginla, just to talk about this real quick, I think Lindstrom has the higher ceiling, but there are absolutely more risks with him, man, especially considering those back and hand injuries. Tij Iginla is the younger of the two players, and I think because of that pedigree and just everything that I talked about, I think he's definitely the safer of the two picks. Maybe not quite the runway that Caden Lindstrom has, but like I mentioned, I don't think there's any way Tij Iginla winds up making it to the Blackhawks at number 18. I just think that would be a little bit too crazy. If he falls out of the top 10, yeah, maybe that's someone the Blackhawks would be intrigued to trade up and get. It also depends on who's dropping or who's already been picked at that same point in time. I just think it's going to be tough for the Blackhawks to go and get a kid like this. Someone's going to be intrigued by him enough to make them their first round selection, and it's probably not going to be outside of the top 12, top 13. Like I said, I do think he's probably going to go in the top 10 because there's so much to like. Ultimately, I think someone's going to snatch him up early. Going to be really interesting to see where Tij Iginla winds up landing, though. But that's going to wrap up my Tij Iginla 2024 NHL Draft Profile here on the show. Coming up in just a moment, before I wrap things up, I do still have to get into MacKenzie Entwistle's 2023-2024 report card. All right, segment 3. We're down to the final 2 2023-2024 report cards here on the show. Again, just a quick reminder, if there's anyone in particular that you missed and want to check out, you can easily find them under the report card playlist on my YouTube channel. Everything is, again, time-coded in the description as well, so you can easily find that point in the episode. Today, though, I'm going to be diving into 24-year-old forward MacKenzie Entwistle, who's set to turn 25 in just over a month's time in July, and just finished up his 3rd season as a full-time NHLer with the Chicago Blackhawks. And while he's mostly been a fourth liner in his time here with the organization and has never and will never put up special offensive numbers. He is definitely a hardworking guy who can provide energy, can provide speed, can provide physicality out there in the bottom six. And he's also a very liked and well-respected guy from numerous accounts in the Blackhawks locker room. And believe it or not, he's actually one of the longest tenured members of the Blackhawks nowadays. So he has that respect in the Blackhawks locker room. He's one of those guys that has kind of been here since the beginning of the rebuild. And it's going to be really interesting to see how all of that impacts what the Blackhawks wind up doing with Entwistle this summer, as he's set to become a restricted free agent for the first time in his career. And as I mentioned, being kind of one of those foundational pieces and what the Chicago Blackhawks have been trying to build slowly but surely over these last couple of years. I wonder how Kyle Davidson is going to feel about that whenever he ultimately has to make that decision on whether to bring MacKenzie Entwistle back or not. And it is a tough decision because, look, more guys are coming up to the pro scene year in and year out. Landon Slaggert, Frank Nazar, those guys are going to be pressing for spots, and there's already not a lot of them available for the Hawks opening night roster. So there's a lot to weigh in there in the decision on what to do with MacKenzie Entwistle. And it's also been very difficult for him to kind of also judge and value his impact on this Blackhawks team when, as I said, since he's been part of this rebuild here, the Blackhawks have been one of the worst teams in all of professional hockey. And it's always hard to dictate, how much value or how well a fourth liner is playing because they're not getting very much ice time. They're usually stuck in defensive minded situations. They're not putting up, very good offensive numbers. It's tough to figure out, is this someone that we want to keep around? Do we think he could be a piece of a puzzle? Or is he just another guy? It's going to be fascinating to see what winds up happening with MacKenzie Entwistle here in the offseason. But as far as his numbers go, nothing crazy here out of Macker. He did play in 67 games, which is a career high for him, one more than he tallied last year. And in those 67 games, he had 5 goals, 6 assists for 11 points. Those 5 goals tied a career high from his first year in the NHL. 6 assists were the same amount that he had last season, one short of his career high, and 11 points as well was one short of his career high that he established during his rookie season. So I didn't ever expect MacKenzie Entwistle to be a gifted offensive player or someone who's, tallying like 25 points in a season or anything. But I did think, given his speed and his puck carrying abilities into the offensive zone, I did think by this time he'd be able to put up a little better offensive numbers. But again, it's, tough to blame that on him solely when he's playing in a bottom six role, not getting many opportunities, playing alongside fellow grinders who, are kind of in the same situation as him. 47 penalty minutes out of Entwistle this season. Nothing crazy, nothing that's going to make me aggravated about him. I think most of those penalties were him providing that intensity and energy that the Blackhawks needed. Minus 29 plus minus rating. Kind of crummy for a fourth liner, if I'm being honest. But again, they didn't put up much offensively. On the bright side, all 5 of his goals that he scored this year were from the even strength variety. And there were a couple of Blackhawks players, Lucas Reichel and Taylor Radish, who didn't put up those same numbers that Entwistle did. So I'll give him credit there. Shot 7.6% though. And his shooting percentage has interestingly dropped every year, and that's part of the reason why I thought maybe there was going to be a little bit more offensive progression these last couple of years, because he came in, he shot in the double digits. It's not like he scored a ton of goals. He only scored 5. But I thought there was upside there and room for him to grow. And this year, the 127 shots that he had was actually the most that he's tallied in a season at the professional level. So a little bit tough to see that number continue to dip from last year. And then in terms of time on ice, he averaged 11 minutes and 23 seconds, 30 seconds lower than what he had last year, but still in a fourth line role. A little bit of a concerning statistic to me, and a little one that actually made me scratch my head is MacKenzie Entwistle was utilized by the Blackhawks a lot at center this year. And maybe he's the better defensive center than Reese Johnson is, but at the faceoff dot, I don't know why the Blackhawks didn't have Reese taking more draws, especially because they're both right-handers. Like, Reese has been over 50% in every year he's been in the NHL. MacKenzie Entwistle has never accomplished that feat, and this year he took more faceoffs than he ever has, and his faceoff win percentage was 43.8%, down from 46.5% that he had last year. So just not a very good faceoff man. I don't think he's If he hasn't really developed it and he's about to be 25 years old, I don't really know if he's ever going to be someone who can be above that 50% plateau. So I was a little confused to see why Entwistle was more of a center, at least taking draws as a center more than Reese Johnson was this year. But at least it was nice to see Entwistle tally career highs in the block shot category with 32, along with 139 hits is a new career high and 29 takeaways compared to only 12 giveaways. I mentioned I do like his speed and puck carrying ability. He doesn't have much playmaking skills to do stuff with the puck when he does enter the offensive zone, but I like that he is at least capable of lugging the mail into the O zone. As far as the analytics go here, 43.0 Corsi for percentage was on the ice for only 16 goals for to 51 against at 5-on-5. Kind of tough for him this year, but again, a fourth line role. You're playing with Reese Johnson and like Rem Pitlick or Zach Sanford. It's kind of hard to put up good offensive numbers there, but I do think they could have been better defensively at the same time. An 89.2 on ice save percentage out of MacKenzie Entwistle. Breaking down the good and bad here before I let you all go. Enjoy the rest of your weekends. The good, I like his size and speed combo, which I think is pretty ideal for the bottom six. I think he has a good, this is going to sound weird, body for the bottom six. But he provides the physicality also whenever he gets a chance. I love to see him provide that hustle, that energy, that intensity. He knows his role and he does it well. He knows he's not out there to be a flashy player. He plays a simple game. I also, like I said, like his puck carrying abilities into the offensive zone. He skates hard, he fights hard, he works hard along the boards. He has good work ethic. I also like to see him take on a little bit more of a role on the penalty kill this year. And if he does stick around in the Blackhawks organization, continue to do that over these next couple of seasons. As far as the bad, he just has a capped upside because of his lack of playmaking and passing abilities. He did fire off the most shots of his career this year, but had the worst results that he's ever had. He found last success, so I was a little bit concerned to see that. And as I referenced, he hasn't developed more offensive skills these last couple of years like I had hoped. He also struggled at the faceoff dot. I'm not sure that he's a center at the NHL level, probably more so of a winger along with his physicality. And again, it's just hard to gauge his value and his impact when the team is struggling and he gets limited ice time. And this is a team that has found itself at the bottom of the standings every year that he's been a part of it. So it makes it difficult to judge someone like MacKenzie Entwistle. Ultimately, though, I'm just going to give him a flat C for his performance this year. It was pretty average for him. Nothing crazy, but nothing too disappointing at the same point in time. Sounds like most of the voters agreed with me on this one. 52% was the most popular vote for C. 24%, the next popular vote was D/F. 22% said B, so people kind of right on the bubble on Entwistle. I think that's about right. Again, hard to exactly figure out what kind of player he is. And then 2% gave him an A. Again, if you don't already, make sure to go and follow at Talkin' Hockey on X so you can vote on the last poll when I drop it on Sunday or on Monday. I only got one more of these report cards to go through, and then I'm going to be diving into my Chicago Blackhawks Summer 2024 Top 10 Prospects list. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel because you do not want to miss out on that when things kick off next week. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. Again, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and also go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Even if you're someone who regularly watches on YouTube, just do me a huge favor. Go and make sure you're following on either Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. It's not going to cost you anything. It won't take any money out of your pocket, but it really does help me out tremendously. I would greatly appreciate that, folks. And make sure to go and check out my personal account on X at Jack Bushman 2. Follow at Talkin' Hockey as well to get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until the next episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekends. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.